Where can the Minnesota Wild improve their play after picking up their first loss of the season? We find out today on Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. And just as a reminder, we are free and available everywhere you listen to podcasts. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we decompress after the Wild's first loss of the season, 5-2 to the Nashville Predators. Alex Micheletti joins the show, and we dive into some of the areas the Wild can improve upon despite their 4-1 start to the season. My name is Seth Topal, host of Locked On Wild, veteran Minnesota sports content producer with a decade plus of experience watching every Minnesota team. Happy to be at the helm for my first full season of Wild coverage with Locked On Wild, and happy to have you along for the ride as well. It is a Micheletti Monday, and so that means Alex Micheletti is our guest. Alex, what's happening?
Hey, how you doing? Another exciting weekend of NHL and Wild hockey, and so ready to break it down. And we had our first Wild loss, so that was interesting for sure.
Yeah, the dream of 82-0 is dead, but at the same time, I did a live post game after the loss, and the theme that I tried to convey was that this is a 4-1 team despite playing their best hockey. They have found ways to win games, and I think one of the most concerning trends that we saw really come back to bite the Wild for the first time was these slow starts, and putting themselves in a 3-0 deficit was just an insurmountable deficit to try to climb out of. And so, for the Wilds, I look at this as an opportunity for them to really try to hone in on some areas that have held them back a little bit. But at the end of the day, like, all hope is not lost. Like, this team still has an opportunity to be a very good one. It's just a matter of finding ways to improve in some areas that have kind of held them back so far this year.
Oh yeah, 100%. Got to figure out the penalty kill situation that's been biting them in the butt, and got to get Kaprizov going. That's huge. So no goals yet, so a little concerning, but not panic mode yet, obviously.
Yeah, and let's start with Kirill, because that's obviously, I think, the biggest point that people have circled and have looked at so far is no goals for Kaprizov through 5 games. He does have 5 assists, but as Brett Marshall pointed out, and I'm going to try to find it here on the fly because it was a good reminder at the fact that I don't think he's, and actually even better, Dean Evason with some quotes after the game against Nashville, courtesy of Jesse Pierce. Kaprizov, in Dean Evason's eyes, on writing his play to start the season, and Evason says he just needs to simplify. 100% just simplify. We know he can get in on a forecheck and he can finish his check. That's what he's got to do first, and then worry about the pretty passes and the pretty plays after. Is it as simple as Kaprizov is just trying to do too much here to start the season?
I think so. I mean, you saw in the third period too. He was forcing things. That shot that went flying over the net. Where he tried to go top corner and just looked like it was just too much on it. One thing that I thought was really interesting was that Dean took Eck off that top line and put Ryan Hartman in there. So that was kind of surprising. Be interesting to see if that move continues or not to reunite Eck with Greenway and Foligno, because Greenway hasn't done anything yet this season. So I don't know what's up with Greenway either. But I thought it was thought that was interesting that they moved Hartman on that line late in the third. But yeah, Kaprizov, I think maybe just trying to do a little bit too much, and just let things flow, and just don't try to overdo it.
And is it a I'm sure it's a situation too of frustration because as we expected coming into the season, he's drawing significantly more attention throughout the course of the game. And we've seen him take some penalties so far this year in which teams try to rough him up a little bit. And so he's dishing it right back. So frustration, trying to do too much. It's just I think Dean hit it right on the head. Is Kaprizov just needs to get back to what he is good at and just try to kind of take a step back. And in some of those situations where he's trying that like otherworldly pass to set up opponents for good opportunities, maybe he just takes it himself and just tries to, put a few more pucks in the net and see if he can get into the goal column that way.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I mean, we kind of talked about this going into the season too, that it might be a little bit tougher for him to score, playing some of these Central Division opponents. They're really physical and not a lot of space out there. And so you definitely saw that against Winnipeg. They were really tough on him, just trying to beat him up. Anaheim, same thing. And so in Nashville, has Roman Yossi out there.
Yeah.
So really elite defender. And so, they were just drawing coverage over to Kirill all night too. So, I mean, it's going to be tough. But one way to get things going would be on the power play too. No, he hasn't done that yet either, but
Yeah.
that can help, get you on a really hot streak too, for sure.
Yeah. And we're 5 games into the season.
Right.
And so, a 5-game goalless streak is a lot. At the same time, it's not a whole lot at all. And there's an opportunity for him to go on like a 4 or 5 game streak of, a goal every night.
Right.
It's just a matter of, I think, and again, credit to Dean Evison. Ever since he has come in, it seems like he has the pulse on this team and he knows when to push and when to not push. It seems like this team is just they're just by and large trying too hard. You've got Kaprizov, on his line, and then the other one that I wanted to just mention here briefly in the open is Kevin Fiala continuing to play well, but not getting a whole lot of help by extension from his line mates. And so Kaprizov kind of trying to help his line mates out more than he's playing himself. And Fiala, it seems like he's doing all the work for his line, at least so far this year.
Yeah. He's kind of stuck on that third line right now. Not really creative players. Freddie Gaudreau has never been known to be that type of guy. So, again, this team lacks center depth. So that's a problem. I wouldn't be shocked to see Dean switch around lines here, especially on this road trip. I got a tough road trip coming up here against Vancouver, Seattle. Their building looked rocking last night. Even though they lost, and Vancouver's playing really well, and Colorado, watch out, Colorado. So.
I did want to give a shout out before we move on. The fourth line was great again tonight, and they were the only line that seemed to cohesively show up here tonight. Sturm and Duhaime continue to just. You can be kind of mismatched with other teams, but those guys are going to outwork you every night. And Sturm and Duhaime both continued to do that. And Nick Bjugstad has looked good so far to start this season. And so Dean gave those guys the start in the third period just to try to get this team going. But it seems like much like with the Eriksson Ek, Greenway, and Foligno line last year, it seems like this fourth line is kind of the heartbeat of this team so far.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I mean, Nick Bjugstad has really looked great with those other two. Great chemistry right now. Playing hard, forechecking hard, and giving an energy boost to the Wild. Duhaime always brings it too. I love how the kid plays with a mean streak out there, and hopefully, I mean, like to see it. Jordan Greenway should watch the fourth line tape and see how those guys are playing. Just Greenway just doesn't use the size out there like those other guys.
No.
And so yeah, good for Nick Bukestad to get on the board. Every line's contributing on this Wild team. So that's that's a really nice thing to see, is the depth that they have. But need the big guns to to start scoring too, for sure.
Yeah, they gotta pull their weight for this team to kind of get back to the offensive juggernaut we know and love. Tell you what, let's dive into the goalie situation a little bit. Kaapo Kahkonen had his first start of the season. We'll talk about that as we continue our conversation with Alex Micheletti. More to come here on Locked On Wild. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows, you're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all of that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there is no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Continuing today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. Make sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as on all of our social media channels. We have content coming out daily throughout the course of the Minnesota Wild season. Seth Topol joined by Alex Micheletti. And goalie-wise, we saw Kaapo Kahkonen get his first start of the season tonight. Gave up 5 goals. As we were kind of talking about pre-show, Alex, a couple of them not necessarily his faults, as I think the defense needs to get some of the blame here tonight. But that one that really sticks out to me is he had an opportunity with the glove and just missed. And that is, I think, kind of what we've seen from this goalie situation so far this year, is that there have been moments where things have looked good, but the two goalies have yet to really hit their stride so far this season, like they did last year.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things too coming into this season, was the goaltending going to regress a little bit. I said Cam Teller was the MVP of the team last year, and they're really going to need the goaltending in this Central Division. Like I said, a lot tougher teams. I don't know what was up with Kaapo tonight. They were going up against a guy in Ingram that was making his first NHL start, 24 years old. I mean, and you can't. And Kaapo's been in the league. To lose that battle was something. I thought. They were coming off a back-to-back. You can't always be an excuse. But he did let in a couple softies tonight, which was a little bit concerning. And so. You're gonna need him though, because Cam can't play every night.
Right.
And they're gonna need Kaapo for probably 30 games, maybe, or maybe a little bit under that. And so he's got to step up and deliver. He can't have games like this one, and then like the 9-0 game against St. Louis last year. And so we're really gonna need him to step up and produce.
It seems like, to kind of grind it down to a simplistic view, is the defense has started to lose contain right in front of the net. And I know a huge focus in the NHL going into this season is the back check. And, where defensemen were able to kind of do that sneakily and get away with it last year to try to help keep the area in front of the net clean, that's going to get called a penalty this year. And so some of it may be an adjustment for the Wild to get used to that, but at the same time, you look at the Winnipeg game and you look at tonight's game, and awful lot of traffic in front of the nets that has led to some deflections and redirected goals that has been certainly part of the problem.
Yeah, Spurgeon, tried to deflected that one right into the guy's stick, and then he kind of whacked it in. But the the third pairing had a tough night too. John
Mhm.
Merrill and Kulikov. They had a really tough game. And people were concerned about that. So hopefully this road trip they can bounce back a little bit. But yeah, the defense was a little bit concerning in front of Kaapo, and they had a tough night on the faceoffs too, which doesn't help at all either.
Yeah, possession time, penalties as well.
Yeah,
Rough night for the Wild in the penalty situation as they took 6 penalties. The Kulikov tripping one was just there's no reason for it, and
no,
Kaprizov took one. I, I think that was tonight. That was either tonight or
Polino took a bad one.
yeah.
Spurgeon had a bad one too.
I'm just trying to find him here. So Kulikov had the tripping penalty. Spurgeon had a boarding penalty. Duhaime had a tripping penalty. Foligno had a tripping penalty. Kevin Fiala had a penalty for goalie interference. And then Matt Zuccarello had a penalty for interference as well. But like 4 penalties in that first period, which largely led to the 3-0 deficit. Like that can't happen.
No, I
So
mean, yeah, and Ryan Johansson's not really known as a goal scorer, and he
no.
was he's more of the setup guy, and he was just sniping. I mean, and Roman Yossi was the player on of the game on the ice. He's so good for Nashville. I mean, he does everything for them. So yeah, that was tough to give them those power play chances for sure.
And yeah, it's a situation too where you have to view this in the 5-game sample size. And yes, I use the phrase annoyance with what we've seen so far in a couple of different phases, but I think in the goaltending frame, I don't know that I'm like panic button right now because again, 4-1 could be Chicago who just lost again. And just they show signs of really not being ready for any game that they play. But at the same time, like I think we got so spoiled with what we saw from Cam and Kaapo last year. There was bound to be a little bit of a regression, but we got to find the difference between like normal regression and concerning trends. And at this point, I think it's just a little bit of regression from both. But that doesn't mean that they can't pick it up here as the season progresses.
No, yeah, 100%. It just clearing up the penalty kill would be huge for this team, and give the goaltenders a little break. Because teams are capitalizing on the power play for them, and you looked at that Winnipeg game for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how the Jets stayed or made that almost impossible to get out of. But another talking about a crazy comeback. Yeah, penalty kill I think is the huge, and staying out of the box.
Yeah.
Is the biggest thing.
Tell you what, let's look at some of the potential line changes that we could see happening for this Wild team this week as they gear up for their next game on Tuesday against Vancouver. Final segment with Alex Micheletti coming up on today's episode of Locked On Wild. This fall, Built Bar wants to help you celebrate freedom of choice. Do you know that Built Bar has a great assortment of flavors? They include coconut, cherry barcia, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, strawberry, cookies and cream, and German chocolate. If you're not sure where to start, raspberry is a great spot in my book, but you could also go the route of the mixed box, and you'll get 2 each of those delicious flavors. The best part, though, about Built Bar is they are amazingly healthy, too. Each Built Bar contains 17 to 18 grams of protein, ranges in calories from 130 to 180, contains only 4 to 5 grams of sugar, and only 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. Amazing tasting, amazingly healthy. If you're not sold yet, I don't know what to tell you because there is nothing wrong with Built Bar. So head to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off of your order. Again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. Seth Topol hanging out on a Micheletti Monday. Alex, we saw the old lines come back. We saw some interesting things as well, as we saw at one point Kaprizov with Hartman and Zuccarello. At one point, we saw Fiala, Goudreau, Kaprizov, I think. So obviously, through 5 games, I'm not a huge proponent of like making major changes, but let's look at some potential tweaks that maybe we could make just to try to get a little more juice out of these lines. So obviously, fourth line is intact because that's the one line you've got right now that seems to be bringing it on a nightly basis, taking advantage of the fact that they've got more skill than the other fourth lines throughout the NHL. So fourth line is set. Do we go back to Eriksson Ek, Foligno, and Greenway for at least the next couple of games just to try to see if that chemistry can reignite some of this Wild offense?
Yeah, I definitely think we'll see that happen at some point on the road trip here. I wouldn't it wouldn't surprise me to see Rem Pitlick get a game too, maybe against Seattle, expansion team. Maybe throw him out there for Victor Rask or Greenway because Greenway hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't shock me at all. But yeah, I mean, be interesting to see Hartman go up with Kaprizov and Zuccarello too.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that as well, and we saw that in the playoffs last year. And Hartman seemed to elevate his play to a level that he was the best player on that line through the back half of the Vegas series. So I would be up for seeing Hartman get a chance to see if he can help reignite that chemistry. As for Rem Pitlick, I would love to see that because I've said it with Victor Rask. We know what Victor Rask is at this point in his career. And I think it's time to see a guy with a little upside in Rem Pitlick who can be a scoring option opposite of Kevin Fiala. And I'm fully on board for Fiala, Pitlick, and Goudreau to see if that line can get it going as well.
They have an all former Nashville Predator line. Yeah, I mean, Rem's got a little bit more speed than Victor, so yeah, that would be nice to interject that line and get a little bit more skill for Kevin on his line. For my
Yeah.
goodness, yeah, I would definitely want to see that at some point for sure.
Ultimately, I'd like to see Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson Ek, and Kevin Fiala, but
Right.
I don't think we're going to see it. Dean Evison wants balance. I can't fault him for that, but at the same time, if nobody is producing, why not give it a shot?
Yeah. I know the guy is down in Iowa, but I think they're really at some point we're definitely going to see Marco Rossi
Yep.
up here, centering a line because they could definitely use his skill. I think they're still trying to marinate him a little bit into the being a pro,
Yeah.
but once wait till they unleash the kid up here, it's gonna be fun for sure.
Gonna be electric. Defensively, are we at the point where we'd like to see Jordy Ben get into the lineup? Alex is shaking his head. No, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I thought tonight was the first like really off night for the third line. In Merrill and Kulikov. They had been fine up until tonight, and so that's I think we give them maybe a little bit more of a pass, but at the same time, got to step it up a little bit.
Yeah, again, like what we were talking about with Rem Pitlick, maybe throw Ben out there against Seattle, just because they're struggling as the expansion team. They lost again last night, so
Yeah,
maybe throw Jordy in for that game and at least get his feet underneath him in a Wild uniform. But the guy had a really rough preseason, so yeah, I don't know if you want the bad vibes out there yet.
well, and that's the other thing too is there are reinforcements there. If the third line starts to struggle, that you can juggle things, and the other nice part too is that the top four, those guys can minimize the impact that third line has on the game. Is you've got Spurgeon, Brodin, Dumba, and Goligoski. Tip of the cap to Goligoski. He has looked great so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, he ate that puck early in the game too. He took a puck right in the midsection to him, and yeah, it looked like he was going to be out. But yeah, he played really good, or really well. Jonas Brodin was great. I mean, it was kind of surprising to see him out there on the power play late and with
Yeah,
the empty net. I think they kind of wanted a defensive guy to help out there, a defensive guy, to help make sure the puck didn't get into an empty net because Nashville definitely had some chances to get one. They just
right.
they couldn't capitalize. So
He made the play of the weekend on that 2-on-1 that Bukestad was trying to break up, and Brodin just sprints down the ice and is able to break it up without a shot attempt. So that was, the highlight of the weekend. And Jonas Brodin does this almost every night, and so like definitely highlight of the weekend was him getting back and being able to break up that 2-on-1 opportunity. So like I said, those top four guys, they do the workman like effort on a nightly basis. And so you're not being asked to see the third line a ton. And so off nights are going to happen for those guys. And hopefully they are able to bounce back because Vancouver is going to be tough. But again, I think the Wild have a good opportunity to come away with a win. And so hopefully, as I said, hopefully they can just tighten things up a little bit, tweak the lines slightly. And if there's anybody that's going to be able to get this team back and ready to play on Tuesday, it's Dean Evison.
yes, yeah, I mean, great coach. I wouldn't want to be the team. Tomorrow for probably going to be bag skated a little bit, but much deserved with the way they played tonight. But that's the great thing about this league is you forget about this one and move on, and get things rolling on the road again, and keep building a little team chemistry out on the road. Yeah, I'm excited for this week for sure.
A 1-1 weekend for the Wild. They're now 4-1 on the season, and some areas for improvement as we keyed in on here in today's episode. We'll check back on these throughout the week. We'll see if we can come up with some legitimate solutions to these things if problems persist. But at the end of the day, an opportunity for the Wild to get back in the win column against Vancouver, and that's all you can ask for at this point to start off the season. Alex, any final thoughts before we call it an episode here today?
Yeah, I tweeted out earlier. Minnesota Wild fans, least you're not a Chicago Blackhawk fan right now. 5-1, and they were at home, and their shutout streak ended of selling all the fans. So the fans are frustrated. Patrick Kane has COVID, so I mean, it's just it couldn't be worse to be a Blackhawk fan. So Wild fans, we have a good thing going here. Don't panic. Only one loss, so let's keep it going on the road here, and yeah, hopefully you get a couple W's throughout the week.
On to Vancouver, and that will do it for today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. Now that you're finished, head to Locked On NHL to get the full lowdown of a full weekend of NHL hockey, to get recaps and everything you need to know about your favorite hockey teams and the entire league, everything going on in the NHL. Make sure to follow Locked On Wild wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, all of our social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, because we have unique content on every single one of them. So make sure to stay up to date on all of the Minnesota Wild hockey content you need. And make sure to stay up to date on all of the latest episodes as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. New episodes every Monday through Friday here on Locked On Wild.